EA Sports just released a ton of information when it comes to Madden NFL 26, including a gameplay trailer, which is about 4 minutes long, as well as a bunch of written information, which is probably the most I've ever seen associated with a gameplay deep dive. And I'm going to go over all of this in today's video. But before I do, as always, if you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to be a subscriber, hit the like button, let me know in the comment section. Oh, that's going to get right into the video. Now, yesterday I put out a video talking about how a lot of information was being leaked by the EA creative director and Scott O'Gallagher about some of the new quarterback mechanics and some of the new features when it comes to quarterbacks specifically in Madden 26 and College Football 26. And it wasn't too long after that this image here was making the rounds semi-viral in the Madden community, as it was originally shared by someone named Maxon Unlimited, not someone I'm necessarily familiar with, but I later saw this shared by several creators that I follow, including Kurt Benkert. As all of these creators said the same thing, it basically shows the difference between Madden 25 and Madden 26 as far as graphics. Now, the original person who shared this did say that there is often times where EA is going to, really put a lot of extra attention into a graphic if it's meant for like a reveal trailer, which is where I think they got the bottom picture from. So they said take it with a grain of salt, but you can see just based off the throwing motion alone how much more authentic the bottom picture looks when it comes to Jaden Daniels' throwing motion. You can just see the him just stepping into that throwing motion differently, the way the arm is cocked. I mean, the top picture just looks robotic and fake, where the bottom picture looks so real that I can't even tell whether it's an actual picture or if it's gameplay footage from the actual game. A few hours later in the same evening, we saw this exact same graphic come up, only this time it was officially from EA Sports as a part of their gameplay deep dive that they premiered at 8 o'clock at night, which seems really coincidental until the deep dive trailer started and it was actually voiced by the same Kurt Benkert.
What's up everyone, Kurt Benkert here.
So I don't know who Maxon Gaming is, but this all really seems manufactured or at least highly coincidental. I'll leave it up to you guys in the comment section what you guys want to believe. But at the end of the day, Kurt Benkert has been one of the most vocal people on X. And I don't know who Maxon Unlimited is, but Kurt Benkert does, as he shared stuff from them before, despite the fact that this Twitter account only has 589 followers as of today, which makes me think that you really can't listen to what this guy's saying because he's too close to EA at this point. And I've already talked about this in previous videos where EA is at a crossroads when it comes to the NFL, as the exclusive licensing agreement they have with the NFL is up for renewal, but it hasn't been renewed yet. So a lot of people think that if Madden 26 doesn't perform, or if it performs as poorly as Madden 25 did, that there is a good chance that the NFL could open up the licensing agreement and allow other companies to make competing games. Now, I start the video by saying all this because there really has been a lot of hype behind Madden 26 from these creators, saying that there's been a lot of improvements made into the game. And watching the gameplay deep dive and seeing gameplay for the first time, it really does look like there's a lot of improvements. So I'm not calling them liars. I'm simply saying that as a veteran of the Madden community, that I'm going to wait and see and not get too excited based off of the fact that we've seen this play out time and time again, year after year, where EA comes out with a bunch of new buzzwords and then the game is basically the exact same. But if I'm simply going off of the eye test, this game does look a lot better, and I've said that in previous videos that I put out, that there's a lot of stuff coming out of Orlando suggesting that EA has put a lot more development time into Madden 26 than it has College Football 26, and I think we're seeing that played out based on the fact that we haven't even seen a gameplay deep dive from College Football 26, and we have seen the gameplay deep dive already from Madden 26, which obviously comes out much later, several weeks after college football, which should be a concern if you're more of a college football fan. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get right into the information here and let you guys decide for yourself. As like I said, the information or the article that they put out with the gameplay deep dive is absolutely massive. I'm going to save you guys from having to read all that. And it starts off with a lot of the same, where they talk about QB DNA, which I've gone over in previous videos. If you followed any of these videos, you should know about that by now, where they're basically just trying to make quarterbacks as authentic as possible to each individual quarterback. So Josh Allen's going to throw like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is going to throw like Patrick Mahomes. You see the no-look pass from Matt Stafford in the trailer, stuff like that. They're going to try to make the most important position on the field, which is the quarterback position, perform the best and be the most unique and authentic to that actual actual player, which is obviously very important. Every quarterback has their own throwing mechanics and behaviors. Same thing when it comes to the coach DNA. They're going to have, Dan Campbell going for it on fourth down more often than other teams, which is something that I went over in previous videos. These are things that are all pretty well known by now. But this article goes a lot further when it comes to the new types of ball holds. They got a new gunslinger one hand, gunslinger mid, gunslinger one hand low, two hand middle back, two hand middle below chin, and two hand low, which is really just a generic setting for how they hold the ball. But then you also have different functions when it comes to how they're going to release the ball. They call it unique arm slots, where they really only have 3 unique base arm slots, which is kind of like the release angle. They have over the top, 3/4 high, and 3/4 low that will be assigned to each quarterback based on what their default throw angle is in real life. And they even go as far as to say that quarterbacks who frequently change their arm slot angle, like Matt Stafford, will be able to dynamically change from one arm slot to another based on the way that they're going to try to get it through an open lane. So you might see like sidearm passes from guys like that to get through the lanes that you can see are obviously basically like accuracy lanes when it comes to the gameplay footage that we see here. In this same breath, they also talk about field vision being important, which is something they mentioned quite a bit when it comes to the height of the quarterback being important this year. It says, first is field vision, a new technology that detects the sight line of a quarterback in the pocket based on height. If a QB is not tall enough to see over the top of his line, his vision and accuracy will be impacted when not throwing in open lanes between blockers. As you'll be made aware of this as the receiver icons will fade out when crossing into segments obstructed from the QB's view. The main purpose of this functionality is to bring more value to traditional tall pocket quarterbacks and more balance to shorter, more mobile quarterbacks. So for people that like to run around with their quarterback, you better make sure they have some height, or else you're not going to have the best of both worlds. Now, it says to further improve scrambling, they also added our run cycle sets. Last year, they had 4 superstar running backs, including Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey, got signature run cycles. This year, we're expanding that to scrambling QBs. That means that Kyler Murray will have his unique running style where he looks like a grown toddler, along with Jalen Hurts and all-world quarterback Patrick Mahomes will have signature locomotive sets. And then they go over a new system called QB traits. It says the QB revamp doesn't end there. They basically added 50 new player traits, which will serve as the mentals or decision-making for CP-controlled players. So basically, they use an example where a guy like Josh Allen will have a runover trait, which makes him more likely to run through contact when scrambling rather than sliding, based on the fact that he averages at least 3 yards after contact on 54% of his scrambles. And they even go as far as to list all 50 of these quarterback traits, which is really unique. You have ones like look for the stars, which is basically your quarterback's going to throw the ball to their star receivers more often. You have things like seeing ghosts, which we obviously heard from Sam Darnold, I think a couple years back when he was with the Jets, where he said he was seeing ghosts out there. It says after a sack, quarterbacks with this trait will tend to force a pass to their first read for the next 3 plays, resetting at the end of the drive. So basically, you could, spook these guys if you're playing against a computer to make them make more mistakes. Obviously, better quarterbacks aren't going to have that issue, but lesser quarterbacks will, as I'm not going to go over all 50 of these, but I will have them on the screen long enough for you guys to look at them, as there's a lot of really unique ones here. You guys can always pause the screen if you guys want to see that. And even though this is mostly quarterback stuff and it's in the quarterback section, it also has at least 10 or more that are for defense, from big hitter at number 34 all the way down to freestyler. These are all based off of defensive options, as you have big hitter, safe tackler, punch it out, knee biter, finesse rusher, power rusher, twister, bullish, bouncer, fly swatter, and gas guzzler, and freestyler, as the majority of these are based off of how they're going to rush the passer, but there's also a lot based off of how they tackle, whether it's a big hitter, which goes for hit sticks, or punched out, which is going to go for strip tackles. We'll stick to defenses. They also talk about some coverages that they're trying to make more viable, basically talking about cover 4 match, which in the past has a lot of issues with trips and bunch sets. So they talk about some new logic that they put in where they're going to try to make it better against those type of coverages. They also talk about deep halves. Obviously, cover 2 has not been a very very viable coverage, but it's one of the most used coverages in the league. So they talk about that, how they're going to make cover 2 defenders get to their landmark much faster. So that's something that they're trying to align with the current NFL trend of non-traditional cover 2 coverages, where a lot of times you see safeties moving before the ball is snapped and they still have to cover those areas. It talks about man coverage, which is something that they first talk about how important leverage is going to be this year, where if you're shading to the outside, or if your cornerback has outside leverage, they're going to lose on inside routes. If they're shading to the inside, they're going to lose on outside routes. It's really going to be that simple. So if you've got somebody running a lot of man coverage, you see their cornerback shading in a certain direction, just run around the opposite direction, they're going to get open every single time. So keep that in mind. But these are things that they're trying to do, or they're trying to improve, that they're basically owning were not very good in previous years. And then the rest of this kind of reads like a title update, as they have a lot of information about how they're really trying to nerf high ball throws. So they basically made the defenders react a little bit differently towards high ball throws. It also talks about zone drops. If you set your flats to 20 or more, the players are going to sprint instead of backpedal to those areas, because a lot of times they still don't make it to the area fast enough if they're not fast enough on defense. They also talk about how cover 3, sky, cloud, and hard flat will now play country cover 3, which means that the underneath defenders will play spot drop zones regardless of the offensive formation, to give players full control in scheming up versus 3-by-1 formations like bunch, and all of cover 3 match and buzz coverages will play skinny and skate respectively, which will allow the defense to match up better to popular routes like flood or verticals on 3 receiver side. The skinny check is the match principle in cover 3 sky, where the backside hook curl defender will be responsible for the vertical route from the number 3 receiver on the trip side. So they're just talking about a lot of new logic that they're trying to put into these formations that were obviously getting exposed or getting used in exploit plays, where they were basically just not covering a lot of these formations. They talk about the new defensive custom zone feature, which is essentially going to be custom stems just on defense, as you basically can hold the LB or the L1 button and then use the right stick up or down to set the flat or whatever zone you're choosing to the exact depth that you want, and you'll be able to see it in real time just like you can with custom stems. So you're going to have a visual on the field. A new feature that we didn't know about prior to this was route committing, which is something that, once again, they reiterate that leverage is going to be the most important, but with the new route commit feature, it's a high risk, high reward type of decision that you can make on field, that if your opponent's constantly being with the same route over and over, like a corner route, you can hit Y or triangle to bring up coverage adjustments, then hit A or X to pick an individual receiver, or all of your defensive backs with the RB for defensive keys in man coverage to look for outside breaking routes to lock it down. Beware that any in breaking routes will be lost by your defensive player and potentially leaving them wide open. So if you don't want to risk so much, just shade like you typically can. But it's pretty cool to have this option where you could also choose, if you're playing against somebody who really only uses so many routes, to basically route commit to it a specific route and then completely lock it down. Now, we already know about how they added stunts and twists to the game, and they don't really talk about that too much in this article. It does say that you have to be in a traditional 4-down lineman look for this to be an option, but it says that when you do this, it says you may have as many as 12 different stunts to choose from, and it says that if you're in a sub defense and only have 3 or 2 down linemen, you may only have a few, or in some cases no stunts to choose from. So it really depends on what type of defense you're in or what type of defensive front you're in. It also talks about some new types of defenses that they're going to have in the game, some exotic blitz pressures like the Vikings, who have a defense where basically they bring pressure from one side of the field, where you're going to have like 4 defenders all blitzing from one side. It says this results in more looping, crossing, and overall ways to get blitzers free off the edge. For our players who relish in making your opponent's offense sweat, you'll have more tools in your belt than ever. There's also an entire section here dedicated to the new coaching adjustments, which there are a lot. It says we've added new coaching adjustments that allows you to adjust the alignment of your safeties on defense. Your safeties can play either deep, 25 yards off the line, prevent, which is a 3-2, tight, or close. In addition to default alignment from the called play, you can also adjust the safety's width to spread wide and pinch, meaning that you can have your cover 2 safeties all the way close to the hash, or you can have them all the way to the center of the field. It's really up to you. You can even adjust the midpoint, with options being left, right, strong, which is a passing strength, weak, away from the passing strength, or to the field hash, or to the boundary hash. You can align your safeties to get involved versus the run, get deeper to not give up any big plays, and everything in between to keep your opponent guessing, as we have a lot of customization options here on defense, which is going to be great. It's going to make it that much easier to play defense. It also says if your opponent is trying to RPO you into the ground, not so fast, new adjustments will allow you to dictate how your AI defenders play versus reads and peak RPOs. You can decide when you want them to play the run first or the pass first. All these things are really great. And then also you have the ability to use zone drops, which they say you can reset your zone drops to default at any time simply by clicking the left stick or the L3 button, which is something that was always kind of around anyway. It says to add more balance and strategy around fumbles, we removed the ability for a user to have conservative ball carrier adjustment, meaning that was essentially taking fumbles off. This adjustment will not only be activated by AI controlled ball carriers, player lock situations, but it says this adjustment was used to an unfair advantage in Madden 25 to avoid fumbles without carrying any real risk. In Madden 2026, we to try to avoid fumbles late in games situations, it says rely on cover ball mechanic by pressing the RB/R1 button. When using cover ball on sim game style, you'll have greatly reduced chance of fumbling, which is something that's been in the game forever, and I'm pretty sure every Madden player already uses, which is the RB/R1 button. So maybe it's going to be a little bit more consistent, because in the past you could cover the ball and it still would be a fumble. It says on competitive, as long as cover the ball is active before tackle starts, you'll be totally immune to fumbles, which is basically what I was just assuming. They do talk about how they have added some new functions like block steering, which is something that I reported on recently in a previous video, where the original assumption that I made or that I was reporting was correct, where it was designed really for defensive lineman users who like to use, basically like to use defensive linemen a lot, and it's really dependent on how good the player is, how high their ratings are, how strong or how fast they are. These are all things that are going to come into account based off of how well you can steer your blocker. But you're going to be able to use the left stick to steer a blocker instead of just trying to disengage right away. You can actually maintain a block. Maybe if you're trying to cut off an outside run, you can steer that block to the edge before disengaging. But something that is new here is that they also mentioned the second level, which is going to be more linebackers and stuff like that. It says when running laterally to make a play to the outside or trying to get downhill to fit a gap on defense, you'll now keep your direction and momentum when you get engaged in a block instead of feeling like you're getting snatched or held with no way out of your movement, which happens a lot where it's like you get like these suction blocks where you basically just get sucked into a nearby blocker and it's like you're just blocked out of nowhere. It says you'll still have the left stick control to move the blocking engagement, and again, the amount of movement is based on the rating and the momentum of the player involved. Now, it doesn't say anything about third level, so if you like to use safeties, maybe you don't have that option, but this is just another reason to use a linebacker in the middle of the field, as it seems like you have the best of both worlds as far as pass coverage and as well as this steering animation. But it doesn't say if you're going to have that as a safety on the third level or a cornerback. Next up, I'm going to go over stuff like presentation, starting off with the depth chart position changes. Now you're going to have like left edge and right edge, Sam, Mike, and Will linebackers. You're going to have secondary position for nose tackle. You're going to have a new gadget player. It also says that based off of guys like Travis Hunter, they removed certain restrictions when it comes to, cornerbacks playing receiver, receivers playing cornerback. So it says get creative with your personnel and use receivers and cornerbacks as you like, but be ready for wear and tear to make it a lot harder for them to be successful. So I think I already heard that Travis Hunter himself is going to have some sort of protection against that, so he can play both. But you can see how they're making adjustments to the depth chart. They talk about player movement being faster. I think they still said that college is going to be the fastest, but this won't be that far off. So expect faster movement compared to last year where Madden felt much slower. One of the biggest things is weather, where we're going to go over now. So basically weather is going to affect everything depending on how dramatic the impact of the weather is. So if it gets really bad, which you've seen some footage where you can barely see down the field in some like really drastic snow games, you're going to see that everywhere on the field. You're going to see that it's going to affect your players change of direction, their speed, their acceleration. If it's like a heavy rain or snow game, you're going to notice that it's harder to kick and throw with penalties to power and accuracy. You're going to see more broken tackles that slide on a wet field, dropped passes and fumbles, all driven by player ratings with their team's home climate. So expect a lot of weather-related mishaps, especially in franchise mode. I don't know if you're necessarily going to see that much in online head-to-head. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll see that based off of the time of the year. Maybe if we're playing in January, you're playing online, you might see more snow games. It's really hard to tell. I don't think they really go over that too much here. But they do mention that warm weather teams like Miami, San Francisco, LA, and Jacksonville will experience heavier movement penalties when they go to cold weather places like Buffalo, Green Bay, Philadelphia. So going to be a huge home field advantage if you have that in late in January or something like that in the playoffs. And then last but not least, we got coach DNA, which is something that we went over at length in previous videos, as well as in this video at the beginning of the video where we talk about guys like, Dan Campbell going for it on fourth down a lot, or, the Washington Commanders are going to go for it on fourth down a lot if you're playing against a computer, because that's what they do in real life. But they also go into depth here where they're going to have something called counterintelligence, where they're going to have also something called coach speak, where basically the coach is going to give you just a few sentences on why you should choose a certain play. So if you're playing against somebody that's running a lot, and this is the example that they use verbatim, where somebody that's running with the quarterback a lot, the coach is going to pick that up and start suggesting more often for you to run things that would counter that in a section called counter, where they're going to tell you, hey, you should run some QB contains or QB spies to slow this player down, or to slow this what your opponent's doing down. And that'll also be a really interesting tool to teach you, which is really what they say. They call it real-time coaching AI, which is something that they credit to the original vision of John Madden when he made this game, that it's not just about suggesting plays, it's also about teaching the game. So if you don't know what plays stop certain things, this game will teach you if you listen to the coaching suggestions in the counter section, which will be very interesting to see what the game considers to be like the #1 defense if somebody's running stretch runs all the time, which a lot of people really don't know how to stop, or if somebody's running a lot of power runs or something like that where they're running to the edge all the time. It's going to be interesting to see what the game suggests to stop that, and if it really does, because if it says, hey, run cover 2 hard flats to stop these stretch runs, now everybody's going to know that that's what you do if somebody's running stretch runs a lot against you, which is really cool. Talks about the playbooks being a little bit more realistic. It said they added or nearly 1,000 new plays, a lot of it with motions and shifts, stunts and twists, exotic defensive pressures, and obviously they talk about something where there's actually double motions, but a lot of teams are running a lot of motions in the NFL, so they're going to do that a lot. And the double motion is brand new, because that's something that I thought used to be illegal. I don't know when they started allowing double motion plays, but they'll have double motions and auto shifts, which can be concerning because in the past, a lot of these plays have been broken, where they either were like automatic penalties to the offensive player using them, or they just basically left a receiver wide open because the defense didn't know how to cover it. So if there's going to be a lot of these type of plays, they might be broken. It's something that have to be watched out for when the game drops. They also talk about that they tried to make improvements to the pass blocking mechanics, but only time will tell. I don't, this could just be a lot of lip service at this point, as you still have the same ability to slide and stuff like that. But it says, which you can see by looking at any Coach Cam play art, protections are set to fit the original design of the play. So be aware of them when you make your hot routes. So they're suggesting that if you make a slide, it could actually mess up the blocking that's designed for the play. But blocking is so hit or miss when it comes to Madden sometimes, when it comes to college football as well. They also list every single superstar ability. It says that, I'm not sure how many of these are new because a lot of them look like redone ones, but I'll have them posted on the screen while I'm talking about it. They talk about hotspot celebrations, which is something that I think was in the game in the past. Maybe it was in 2K back in the day. I don't really remember, but I've seen hotspot celebrations before, where it says you'll have a window of time either to sprint or jog with your player to get to one of 9 hotspots along the boundary of the end zone. Each hotspot will house unique celebrations that trigger based on where the celebrating player is. You'll see shadow boxing with the goalpost, totally legal fake dunk attempts near the crossbar, celebrations that interact with the crowd, and even more signature content, to just name a few. So imagine if you're playing in Green Bay that you can dive into the crowd and do the Lambeau leap. I would imagine things like that should be a staple of the game. And if you have a team that has a celebration like that, I would imagine you'd want to use that over and over. But they don't specifically say what celebrations. It just says that we've created more than 4,000 elements, and it says there are 20 solo celebrations plus numerous animations across all the hotspots. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what that stuff looks like. As that's pretty much the end of it here. They go into some just some stuff like modernized skills trainers, which is something that, basically they have some new enjoyable skill training games with 130 new tutorials covering ball mechanics and stuff like that, ball carriers, whatever, which is stuff that I'm sure lesser or players that haven't played the game as much might want to do. But I'm going to end the video there. What do you guys think about all this? To me, I couldn't be more excited for Madden 26. I'm definitely be doing more content on it this year because it seems like they put a lot of work into it and it looks like a much improved product. But like I said, I don't necessarily fall for the hype because that's something that is part of the Madden cycle, is they always hype you up and a lot of times they let you down. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Other than that, if you want to see more videos about Madden or college football, that pop up on my screen, just click links. Until next time, thanks for watching, man. My shit out. Need more help or just want to show your support? Then head over to my Patreon and join my team, where you can get exclusive content like ebooks and bonus plays, as well as early access to my vids and more. Link in the description below.